What was this pay-per-view? We had 2 good matches and an insane amount of stupid decisions and stupid angles that made absolutely no sense. And the sad thing is, this could have been a very solid pay-per-view. All they needed to do was 2 good matches out of 11. 2 out of 8 if you want to just count the pay-per-view itself. What were they thinking? Oh my, they weren't. This is the Pro Wrestling Program. My name is Kyle, and today we're going to be reviewing AEW's Full Gear, which happened on November 18th, 2023. This could have been such a good card, and it wasn't. So let's dive into the pre-show, then we'll talk about the actual pay-per-view. Eddie Kingston versus Jay Lethal. It was okay for what it was. I don't like Eddie Kingston, and he sold those chops from Lethal way too hard. Like, he took one chop, and he's like, like in such pain. And then he takes another chop, and he takes a bump from it. Eddie Kingston is a big guy. These chops, if a chop can make you hurt that bad, Swerve and Paige should have ended in 3 minutes. But it went on for half an hour. Way to make Eddie Kingston look like the weakest guy on the roster. He's a big dude. Everybody makes fun of him because he doesn't lose weight and he doesn't work out. That's what they all say, right? So why is he selling as if he isn't a big dude? Was he not taught how to sell after so many years of wrestling? Like, where did he go to wrestling school? Who taught him? Somebody that no-sells everything? Did Ultimate Warrior? Anyway. Stupid. And here's the thing, too. I love Jay Lethal. I think that he's mixed in with Jeff Jarrett and Sanjay Dutt in that group, and that's kind of a joke to a degree, which is too bad because I think Jeff Jarrett is another solid performer. Even at 56 years old, he has a better mind for the business than a lot of the people here if he just goes to old school wrestling. Sanjay Dutt, I enjoyed quite a bit in TNA back in the day. So I think that I don't know how well he can go because I haven't seen him wrestle in a while. And Jay Lethal can wrestle, but they're just completely wasting him. He should be Ring of Honor World Champion right now. Then we had Claudio Castagnoli versus Buddy Murphy, and I actually like this match. For a pre-show match, this was pretty good. I wish it could have gone a little bit longer, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. It wasn't horrible. So I guess there's 3 matches that were kind of good. Like it's close. It's close to being watchable. Then we had MJF and Joe versus the Guns in the Ring of Honor Tag Titles match. And there's a few things that I don't like here. Number 1, the biggest problem is that MJF is your world champion and he is main eventing the pay-per-view in a few hours. So this is the big pop that the crowd sees him. This is the first time that they're going to be seeing him come out. So you're usually going to get the biggest pop when they first come out. Now they do kind of try to rectify this, and they kind of did with the angle that they went through with this. But still, MJF should not be wrestling twice. I kind of get where they're trying to do is that they're trying to make the pre-show one of the things that kind of makes people say, okay, well, I just saw that pre-show. There was a big angle. Now I need to watch the pay-per-view and order it. I get that to a degree, but your pre-show isn't what should be selling this pay-per-view. It should be the dynamites and collisions that do. Not everybody is watching the pre-show because it's a pre-show. There's no real reason to watch it other than the diehard fans. So put it on Dynamite. Your biggest angles should be when you have the most viewers so that they're watching them. Because that's the whole point of the pay-per-view business in wrestling. You build up the TV shows with matches that lead to angles and storylines and feuds and promos that you build throughout the week to make you want to watch the pay-per-view. Because then you have a reason to watch the Dynamite and Collision because that's where they're putting out the stories. That's where they're putting out the promos, the matches that lead towards the bigger matches. That creates angles, that creates the feuds, that creates the heat. So there's a reason to watch the show. So that then you can watch the pay-per-view and be like, man, I really want this person to win. I really can't wait to see what happens here. That's the whole point. And AEW and Tony specifically does not understand this. Now, I will be saying that there are some positives to this show, and I will say every once in a while when there's something that's done that Tony or AEW does well, I will give them their credit because there was a few things here that I liked. And the one thing that I didn't like originally when Joe relinquished his Ring of Honor TV title was that I thought he was going to be actually replacing Adam Cole and becoming a tag team champion with MJF. But it looks like Cole is still the champion and Joe was just the sub. So that makes sense. All Joe did was help MJF retain his title. Cole's still champion as well. And it allows him to fight MJF for the world title later on in a title match. All right. I'm okay with that. I just don't like that MJF is kind of wrestling here. And I did like this match because I like the Guns. I think that they have so much talent for where they are right now. I think in a few years, more specifically if they go to WWE, AEW fans just seem to be so silent with them. And I think that that would completely change with WWE. I think that that's, if you put them in NXT for a year, the things that they could do as a tag team would be wild. Anyway, I did really like a lot of the Samoa Joe interactions here, and he's like clapping for MJF. That was really well done. I liked this. Adam Cole came out. That was a big moment. So there's a lot of things here that I did quite enjoy about this tag team match. And then MJF and Joe win. The Guns attack MJF once Samoa Joe leaves, and he's not going to be part of that because he doesn't have to be a part of that. He said he was going to help retain the tag titles, and that's it. So he leaves. MJF gets attacked. Cole can't do anything, and they're attacking his leg. And then they grab the chairs, and that's where I thought they went a little bit too far, because then we had an ambulance angle where he's taken away to the hospital, and he's yelling at Cole to not let them strip him from the title. I liked a little bit of this because it really showed that Adam Cole is potentially a good friend, depending on if they actually turn him or not. If they keep him as a friend, it makes Cole look like, even though I'm super injured, I'm going to make sure that they don't, I'm going to sub myself in your place and take on Jay White, even though I'm super injured. But at the same time, while I'm saying that, doesn't make any sense either. Why is it that they're taking MJF away on an ambulance and they say that he can't wrestle, but Adam Cole, who is way more injured, is going to be allowed to wrestle in his stead in the main event? AEW booking, Tony Khan has no idea what the hell he's doing. He doesn't can he just have one person that understands the wrestling business to kind of say, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that. And here's why. Tony Khan is kind of like Vince Russo, where he might have like an idea of brilliance every once in a while, but you need like a Vince McMahon to kind of say, no, this is what we're going to do with those ideas instead. That's what you need. You need a buffer for Tony Khan. Or whoever's booking this. Tony Khan keeps saying it's him. I don't know if it's necessarily him or the wrestlers that are suggesting things and pitching things. Whoever it is, Tony Khan it still goes to Tony Khan, and he needs somebody else taking over for this because this was just dumb. So MJF is now injured and we're starting the pay-per-view, and this is what their goal was, to kind of get you to pay for the pay-per-view. But they announced that Adam Cole is going to be wrestling in his stead instead. So anybody that didn't watch the pre-show is like, now I don't get to watch MJF versus Jay White, which was probably the biggest match on this card because MJF is your biggest star. He's your biggest draw at this point in time, even though they've been kind of, some of the baby face stuff that he does, I think, is hurting him a little bit more than it is helping. There's positives and negatives to his babyface run. But either way, he's still your biggest draw. And now you're saying that the match is going to be, so you injure him for the pre-show and you say Adam Cole is going to be wrestling at the beginning. So anybody that didn't order it is like, well, if MJF isn't wrestling, why should I watch this? It's an angle that you do for a TV show, not a pay-per-view. Dumb. And now let's get on to one of the best matches of the night. Sting, Edge, and Darby versus Christian and his sons, Luchasaurus and Nick Wayne. Loved this. This was everything I wanted it to be. It was perfect. Beautifully booked. Beautifully booked. Great job, Tony, or whoever booked this match in terms of, or produced this match, because it was before we even get to the match, the entrance of Edge and Sting coming out and their gear, their jackets were beautiful. I loved the look of everything here. This to me is the biggest draw. This was the biggest draw for me. Christian is doing the best he's ever done. And I'm loving this feud. Nick Wayne, who I don't care for at all. And I think he was thrust way too quickly into big matches like this and big angles. Actually did a pretty good job during this match. So the whole story here is that Darby, for one, was taking the beat down, and he needs to give a hot tag to either Edge or Sting. And that's perfect because he's the smallest guy. He's the runt, and they're beating down on him, and they're beating down on him, and they're beating down on him. And Christian won't get involved at all when Edge is there. He won't. He just runs out of the ring. Luchasaurus, I think, grabbed him and pulled him out. Nick Wayne might have done that as well. There's so many times where Christian almost had to fight Edge and got out of it, but he'll have no problem going in the ring and fighting Darby for a little bit and then giving the hot tag to somebody else so that they can beat him down more. Perfectly done. Then we get, after that, we also get, Christian got hit. He took the first big bump, and Tony Schiavone said that, oh, Christian just took a bump. And I'm like, why are you calling it a bump? That's what I can say. That's what you can say after the match, after the show. You don't say it on commentary to the live audience that Christian just took a bump. It's kind of a wrestling term that's like saying kayfabe. You don't say those things. Anyway, he did take a bump on the outside, and it was for his first bump, and then Edge was just about to get a hot tag, and Christian shows up, pulls him down, and runs away again. So good. So good. This is just old school wrestling, and it's wrestling 101. It's back to the basics, but it works, and the crowd was into it too. And Nick Wayne was doing some good stuff. At one point, though, they went for some kind of weird, him and Darby were on the top rope, and I get scared sometimes with Darby. I really feel like he's going to injure himself, and I hope that Nick Wayne doesn't go that route too. He's so young, and I don't want Darby to influence him that much, take these crazy bumps and injure yourself to the point that you can't be walking correctly when you're 40 or 50 years old. It scares me a little bit. But anyway, at one point, Edge does finally get the hot tag, and Christian is there. He's not I think Luchasaurus was the legal man, and Christian just bolts and grabs his title and runs away into the crowd and just keeps going and never comes back. So good. And that allowed Edge to get and I think that Christian had also hit Luchasaurus, Sting might have ducked. It was Sting or Darby that had ducked, and he ended up hitting Luchasaurus in the face, and then Edge got the hot tag. Christian bolts. Luchasaurus gets the spear. 1, 2, 3. Boom, done. 3.5 stars. Really liked this match for what it was. I wasn't expecting a match of the year here, but I was expecting something solid, and that's exactly what I got. And just booked perfectly. We still have Edge versus Christian going forward, and people are going to go crazy. So Tony's building this up. He's building it up like he should. And Christian just, oh man, everybody in this match did a great job. And then afterwards, Darby cut a promo and he said, this is going to be the last time that Sting is wrestling wherever they were. I can't remember where they were. Was it California? I can't remember. And where were they? Anyway, it doesn't matter. He says that this is going to be the last time that Sting wrestles here. They're putting over Sting. I like this. This is just great. And then, okay, another thing that unrelated to the match, but at one point on commentary, what's his name? Wolf. I don't even remember what his name is. Desmond Wolf from TNA. What's his name? Anyway, he says, What are you doing standing? They ask him, what are you doing standing up? He's like, I'm standing up because I thought Christian was going to come back. It's just a little line I absolutely loved. He's underrated on the commentary team. And then we had Moxley versus Orange Cassidy. It's garbage. It's absolutely trash. If you like Orange Cassidy, fine. This might have been your cup of tea. I liked a lot of it when Moxley was in control and no selling half the things that Orange was pushing his way, but it was the ultimate underdog story. That doesn't make any sense because Orange Cassidy is about as intimidating as the regular jobbers that they have on any show. He is as intimidating as the women wrestlers fighting in the main event for the world title, like against MJF. That's as intimidating as Orange Cassidy is. He's a man-child, and Moxley looks like an actual adult against him, and they had Cassidy win and beat him. Granted, The only thing I'll say that's because I just don't, the pockets thing is so dumb. If you want to have a comedy wrestler, have comedy matches, I always say to put him against other comedy guys or low card guys that he can get away with this. The only thing that I'll say that was done well was when he finally did go for his pockets, Moxley ran towards him and he ducked out of the way, and that allowed Moxley to hit the top rope, which didn't have the cushion on there anymore. That makes sense in a way that Moxley would have done that and fallen for it. That's wrestling. That's the only thing I liked. And then he hit him again with his hands still in his pockets, which is so dumb. If this match is supposed to matter to Orange Cassidy, going in to do that to piss somebody off makes sense. But then to continue wrestling like that, even for just for one move, is dumb. Don't. So Orange Cassidy retains the title, beats Moxley, the only multiple-time world champion. So they don't want Moxley to be worth anything anymore? Is that what they want to do? They want to just have as few draws as possible? Is that the goal here? This isn't going to do anything for Orange Cassidy. People have already decided if they like Orange Cassidy or not. So this isn't going to gain viewers. It's not going to... Orange Cassidy, every time he main events on Dynamite, is the biggest drop, is the lowest main events you'll ever see. He went under 700,000 in a tag match on Dynamite recently. His match against Penta in September, his main event match against Penta, had less viewers than a 3 versus 3 women's match that preceded it, right before. Anyway, on to the next match. The women's world title match here, Shida versus Storm. I don't know. It was okay for what it was, like 2 stars. It wasn't great. I do think that Storm winning was the better idea, though, because people are really behind her. And like, at least she has a character. At least she stands out from the women's division. So I did kind of like this. I just didn't necessarily like the match. I just thought that it was nothing special. Oh, and yeah, I did like that they used something like a gimmick where she put something in her pants to hit her finisher on Shida, but like you could clearly see it in her tights afterwards because it was like slipping down from her actual wrestling gear, and it was just kind of like, that's super obvious. But anyway, that wasn't really their fault. Like, that was just a botch, right? Like, it was just a flub. It was a mistake. Then we had the Fatal 4-Way ladder match, and I liked this. It was a little bit hard to kind of watch every once in a while, but for the most part, I really like this. I think that Roosh, who I haven't seen too much of, did a really great job here. I was like, this was great. He was kind of the standout. A lot of the things that he did made sense. At one point, Cash and Roosh run up the ladder early in the match, and they're both looking at each other, and they're like, well, we're not going to stand on here and fight each other because that's dumb. So they climb down, and then they wrestle afterwards off the ladder because there's no point in fighting on the ladder. I love that. That makes sense. That's what I want in wrestling, when things make sense. I don't like it when I suspend disbelief and be like, well, this looks as fake as possible, but it's cool. Could we not have parts in matches that look cool without suspending disbelief? That's how it should be. You can still get a lot of cool moves in when it makes sense. At the end of the match, Cash and Roosh slowly climbing the ladder to then fight on top of the ladder makes sense. Early on, when they're still like perfectly fine, climbing down the ladder to fight, perfect. Beautifully done. There's a few parts where Cash and Roosh really did some good stuff here. Ricky Starks also was a star in this too. I really liked it. And I want to also say, Big Bill used to be like, he had let himself go when he got released by WWE. He ended up being fat, like he just had no muscle to him anymore. And now look at him. The guy has a 6-pack. He's doing so well. And I'm really happy for him that he's completely changed his life around. And now he's on AEW. He's not in the indies. He's making a solid paycheck, and he's a tag team champion. Good for him. Seriously, he's not necessarily my favorite at all, but I'm just very happy for where he is in life right now. Then we had Julia. Did I write down everything here? Okay. 3 3/4 for that ladder match. I thought that was the best match of the night, followed by the Sting match. After that, just nothing. Then we had the TBS Women's Championship here in a 3-way. Statlander versus Julia Hart versus Sky Blue. Statlander was by far the standout of this match, but I liked it because Julia Hart was able to win the title by pinning Sky Blue when Statlander had basically finished her off for her. So it was a way to get the title off of Statlander while still making her look strong and giving Julia Hart, which people are really starting to get behind, that has a character where she stands out, which they need in AEW for the women's division by far. So I like where they went with this. I thought it was okay. And this match was better than the women's match. Not by a mile, but it was better. I don't remember when they announced it, so before we get to the last 3 matches, but they did also announce that Will Ospreay is joining AEW. He came out to a massive pop. I think this was a good win for AEW because the guy fits AEW's mold that he can wrestle. But when he got on the mic, all the crowd just went silent, and he's yelling at them to shut up, to let him speak, to let him finish. And it's like, it's crickets out here, man. Are you not listening? Nobody's making any more noise anymore. Like we did when you came out, where's a big pop. But after that, we were dead silent. And he's like, let me finish, bruv. Nobody's talking. Why are you saying? I get that that's the idea that he had for his promo, but like everybody had shut up. And when that happens, don't go that route. If nobody's saying anything, change it on the fly and say less. Less can still be more. I'm here. That's all you need to say. I am elite. I am all elite. That's all you need to say. I'm going to be at Revolution, yada, yada, yada. That's, it was just a little bit cringe. But I think that Ospreay is a big win for AEW because, while I don't think that necessarily he's going to be like a world champion that's going to draw crazy amounts of people, I think he's going to produce some excellent matches throughout every match that he's on, unless it's against Orange Cassidy or so. He's already had again. He did. I will say that he did give Orange Cassidy his best match. Still wasn't great, but it's just not believable. It's just not believable. That's the biggest problem. Anyway, this is about Ospreay, and I think that he's a solid win for AEW. He can kind of be like an AJ Styles for them, just maybe not as many world title wins or the length of those title reigns that AJ Styles did, because AJ Styles can at least talk on the mic. But Ospreay, I think, is a definitely good win for AEW, who needs some main event players on their roster. And I would probably say that Ospreay is at least top 5 wrestlers that are current wrestlers that are wrestling. Maybe even the best. And that's impressive. I don't know. He's top 5 at least, maybe top 3, maybe the best. Then we had Hangman Adam Page versus Swerve in the most brutal garbage match that I have ever seen. I don't look at death matches ever. I think they're dumb. They're meant for trash companies that are never going to make any money ever. And to put this on a national show where most likely there's some parents that are watching this with their kids. And while it's an adult show, it has a TV-14 rating, so that's up to the parents. But you want those kids to be watching. So you want those parents to show up and spend money and have the kids want their parents to spend money. And outside of that, it's still a national show. And they went so far with this that hurts the business in so many ways. For one, it was disgusting and just too much. I don't give this a rating. It's not applicable for me because it went for half an hour, way too fucking long. This was the dumbest match I've ever seen. It made no sense. Within 3 minutes, Swerve looked dead and the match should have ended then. Had that been the case, I might have been okay with it. It went for 27 goddamn more minutes. And it was disgusting. He's stapling him over and over and over again. They brought in a concrete block. I hope it was a gimmicked concrete block, because that could have just like paralyzed Paige. And Swerve clearly bladed way too deeply. And I'm not saying that this doesn't happen. Eddie Guerrero versus JBL, for example, in WWE. Eddie bladed way too hard. That's scary when that happens. I like a little bit of blood every once in a while when there's a blood feud. This is a blood feud, very much so. And in that sense, they should have been going after each other to kill each other. In wrestling terms, we've seen blood feuds before that didn't need to go to this extent to injure themselves, to put this graphic violence that's unnecessary. I'm all for violent movies and all that kind of stuff. That's not why I watch wrestling. I watch violent movies so I can actually see somebody get shot in the head and get blown up. Okay? I get that. That's not why I watch wrestling. Because wrestling is still partially real. I don't want to see anybody with scars that they're going to have for the rest of their lives. I don't want to see somebody go unconscious because they bled too much. That doesn't entertain me in the slightest. That's disgusting. It's so wrong on so many levels. And at one point, Adam Page just nearly kills, once again, Swerve on a table with barbed wire, and he just goes like for 2 moves over and over, and that's where it should have ended. There's so many times where this should have ended. So not only is it just completely disgusting, not a match that I can rate, but it's also going to hurt the business in the sense that, okay, this is now allowed in AEW pay-per-views. So what can we do to top this? What can we do that will be just as disgusting as this in the future? That's what's the mentality now of wrestlers that are potentially in AEW, or people that are thinking about getting into the business, or people that are currently in the indies that are thinking, what can we do with that? Just national TV? We just saw it. Maybe people that haven't seen death matches are now seeing this. Just such a stupid decision. And then the other thing too. So it's gross. It's disgusting. They went way too far. Then you're going to get people that are going to want to duplicate this potentially. And then it hurts the business because look at everything that they went through and they survived. And look what Jay White, look at every other match that we had tonight. Why did people lose so early on? Nothing was thrown at them. Nothing. I think that everybody needs about 27 finishers now, or they need to go through this kind of amount of pain before you can actually win a match. Because everybody's invincible. Or Paige and Swerve are the strongest by far in this business. And one of them is going to become champion, clearly. Probably Swerve, and he'll never lose unless it's against Paige. Because they're the only two that have ever shown this amount of strength. It doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. God damn AEW. You're so dumb sometimes. This is exactly why I don't like AEW necessarily. I watch it for specific wrestlers, but this stuff that they do where they don't have any, whoever's booking this has brain matter leaking out of their ears. They're dumb. Doesn't make any sense. Then we had Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega versus the Bucks. There were parts in this match that I liked. I think that Chris Jericho, unfortunately, is starting to slow down the match. And what I think that Jericho could do is just focus on old school wrestling where you don't do as much high flying stuff, where you do maybe 1 or 2 high flying things that you can still do very well. That's, I think, what Jericho, Jeff Jarrett is still able to wrestle. Who's older than Jericho, but he doesn't have to do a bunch of flashy moves. And Jericho doesn't need to either. He just needs to wrestle smart. He can be a technical wrestler. So that's what I would hope that they would kind of do instead, because I think that it would make his matches a lot more entertaining, because he wouldn't necessarily, and when he does go for something big, it would mean a little bit more. And if he does it well, and then it's less botches. So it was just a little bit sloppier than I wanted it to be. Jericho still had some parts where he looked great. I won't deny him that. And Kenny Omega had some good parts too. Even the Bucks, every once in a while, did some stuff that did look nice. Eventually here, we did have the Bucks turn heel, and they go up against Omega and all that kind of stuff. And, then they lose the match, and they have the biggest hissy fit outside the ring. So I don't know if this was Tony or the Bucks thinking that, like, who thought out of Tony or the Bucks that this would be a good idea for the Bucks to just play themselves in real life, like, and having hissy fits, the biggest hissy fit that they've ever had. Like, they look like a bunch of babies. What does this do for them? I don't understand how this makes anybody want to, like, watch more of the Young Bucks and think that this will help them in any way, shape, or form. It makes no sense. It's dumb. 2 3/4 stars. Just the hissy fit was stupid. All right. And now we've got... Oh, and there was another part too in this match where it was kind of weird, where Jericho was wrestling one of the Bucks on one side of the ring, and Omega was on the outside. I think that he was supposed to do a spot out there at some point in time, but they did a move on Jericho right beside the ropes where Kenny is, and Kenny's right there, and he could clearly just, like, you know, smack him and get the ref to not do the pin. And the other Buck, like, kind of holds him, but he's not holding him enough. Like, they should have pulled Omega back a bit. Like, he should have just grabbed Omega and pulled him instead of just holding him there. And he was still reaching out. And it was just, that was a bit cringe. It was just, do a little bit more when it looks like you can clearly break up the pin. It's like if you're too close and you can just clearly grab the ropes, you got to do something to tell the guy, pull me back so that I can't reach it anymore. It's little things like that that really make a difference when you're watching matches. But it was okay. It nothing horrible in this match. And then finally we did have, so MJF versus Jay White, which Adam Cole comes out still dressed in his regular clothes, not in his in-ring gear. Nobody is going to stop him. And he has, like, a cast over his leg, his actual foot. And nobody's stopping him. Then we hear the ambulance, and it's like, oh, Scott Steiner's joining AEW, and you get a little bit excited. But no, it's the ambulance coming back. It's MJF driving himself back in the ambulance. He comes out, and he hobbles to the ring. Everybody's trying to stop him. Nobody tried to stop Adam Cole. How does this make any sense? Oh, we can't let MJF wrestle because he's our actual draw, so he can't actually get injured. It's dumb when you think of it in those terms. AEW just really needs to start thinking about this. It's getting ridiculous. So anyway, but it looked on as dumb as all of this was, it still made Adam Cole look like a good friend if that's what they're going with, and they will stay friends because he was going to sacrifice himself, even as injured as he was, to try to keep MJF's title reign going. I like that part. I just thought everything else was stupid. And then the match itself went for half an hour, made Jay White look like a bum because he couldn't beat MJF. And the match itself was just nothing. I would have much preferred MJF getting attacked by the Guns and maybe, I don't know, security comes out and pulls them away before they can actually use the chair, so that MJF is seen throughout the night with an injured leg, but he's not fully, like, he didn't go to the hospital because it wasn't that bad. And then he can start the match and it's not too bad. And he wrestles Jay White, and then Jay White just slowly starts attacking his limb. I love limb work. That can be some of the best matches. Like, Bret Hart has had some fantastic matches. Danielson, everybody has had these great matches where they attack a specific limb that's beautiful. The one match with, I think it was Shawn Michaels, had one where he was attacked and he had to use the ropes to hit his finisher. Little things like that really add to a match for me, but it just slowed down the match to such a pace that MJF would not sell necessarily. Like, MJF has the ability to be a good wrestler. I've seen him do it, but then he sometimes goes into, I want to sell to the crowd and do more of a Hogan thing, which isn't as good because Hogan can't really wrestle that well. So I don't like that he goes into these things where I want to sell the storyline here, but I'm selling too much. And then he'll go afterwards and sell and not sell at all. At one point, he runs full torque, and it's the fastest I've ever seen MJF run in a ring, where he runs, doesn't sell the leg at all, jumps out, lands, and does a cutter onto Jay White, which looked perfect, lands on his injured leg and doesn't sell it, just lies on the ground like that, but not in pain with the leg. It looked beautiful. if MJF wasn't fucking selling an injury that brought him to the hospital in an ambulance where everybody didn't want him to wrestle. Why the fuck did we do this? This is so... That's where all you need to do. You want to have this cool spot that looks beautiful. Don't have MJF injured to the point that he can't do that. Injure him halfway through the match after he's done this cool spot where he starts to slow down afterwards because he's been injured. Or he's been injured a little bit. He slaps his leg a few times, slaps himself in the face to get the adrenaline pumping, runs, hits the cutter, lands on his leg, screams out bloody murder in pain. It's not hard to book wrestling. It really isn't when you just look at the little things that add up. And you can still have these great moments. You can still have MJF selling a leg injury. You can still have him do that beautiful looking cutter. And it all makes sense. Just think about these things before you do them. 2 3/4. I had a hard time getting into it. And I think it could have been a great match without that. So many matches here I think could have been better than what they were. Sting, Edge, Darby, Christian, they performed exactly as I wanted them to. The ladder match performed exactly as I wanted them to. I think Paige and Swerve, and the other thing, okay, just before I want to go back to Paige and Swerve for a second. Paige was fired up and he hates Swerve for going into his house, right? That was your chance to kind of have the babyface go over. I know that they're trying to push Swerve and 50-50 booking isn't good, but I think you would have had the first match with Swerve where he wins, second match, this one, where Paige wins, and then the third match can be Swerve that win the finality of it. But you needed to have the babyface go over here because of how passionate he was beforehand on Dynamite, and because that Swerve was in his house, you needed to kind of make things equal now. So now the feud is done. It's dead in the water. They should not be wrestling again because they've killed each other. And I don't think that they should have gone this far either. I think that they should have had just a very intense fight in the sense of they just can't pull themselves off of each other, and they're punching the hell out of each other, and they're doing their finishers every once in a while, and they lift themselves up after they've done a finisher to do another finisher because they hate each other. That can work, and they can have a few spots here and there that can have some of the hardcore elements. Definitely. You can definitely do that. Just don't go overboard for half an hour where it looks like you've killed each other. That's AEW Full Gear. MJF versus Jay White really let me down. I think that Jericho, Omega, and the Bucks could have been a little bit better as well. Paige and Swerve could have been a match of the year. Like their last match at the pay-per-view that they had before this was very good, and this was crap for me. I know that there's gonna be people out there that do love garbage wrestling, and this will be a good match for you, but this was crap to me. And so then we could have had I don't know, 3 extra matches that were good. It's too bad. It's really too bad. So that's it. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about all of this. And that is AEW Full Gear. You have been bearded in. Beardage.